Hey guys, Joshua Peterson here with Peterson Electric. Really good video. I've never done one before. I think you'll like this. A homeowner called me. It's about 200 foot from the house to this pole. They're out in Berthoud. This pole, there's their transformer. You can see the old rust bucket. It's getting old. Power comes down on that piece of schedule 250, or excuse me, 2-inch, and then splits right here after the meter with some bugs down. This goes to the barn. This goes to the house. Go ahead and bend down. This guy right here had to be cleaned up. We had about that much of mice inside of there and junk. We cleaned up off the bus bar, killed it. Got 246 here, got 246 here, 246 out of the bottom of this fuse cartridge that we're gonna put back in. Check the fuses, fuses are good. Had a key note though that this one had been replaced on the opposite side of the issue. We did have to identify where which was our red leg, so we could figure out on the other side of the house. We had to kill that, and we don't just typically rub those together. I'll show you on the other side what we did to help out with that. But we did get a locator today, and this thing's really good about trying to figure out which leg is down. And what we're trying to figure out is where it dropped off. So as you can see, our trench, we already pre-did this with yellow, put some flags. Shows us real well. We did the neutral on the black, which we think we're good, because the neutral on the black actually had good continuity once I put on a bug. And then I got from neutral red a little bit of an issue dropping off and getting higher ohms of resistance, whereas I got like 0.1 on the black to neutral, but on the red I got 20 ohms of resistance, which is pretty high for what we're doing. There is a voltage drop formula you can use. It's called 2 kil divided by circular mil, and that's 2 times your constant. This is a 4-aught aluminum, so you're gonna look in your chart in chapter 9 table 8, the back of 2017 code. It'll talk about that ohms of resistance is 211,600. But 2 kil, you're gonna use 2 constant times 21.2 for aluminum compact times distance of 225 foot, and then times that by roughly 100 amps, though it's 200 amp, because that's probably what they're pulling here. So you're gonna get somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 3%, 3.5 voltage drop. If you go up to 200 amps and then you do it at 5%, you're probably gonna be closer to 275 foot, because from this point of the disconnect in the house, you have a sub panel 75 foot away. So you wanna keep that in mind, but you're supposed to have 5% voltage drop, which I think is 210.19 in the code book. As you're figuring that, roughly it's gonna be 9 volts minus 246. And that's gonna give you about 235 volts. So one of the legs is dropping down to about, we don't have 246 over here, or even 230. We actually have like 6 volts. So we know that a splice has been created, and it's been, there's been an issue, and the homeowner had his house 10 years ago, bought it from someone, said that they put in a fence. This is starting to make sense. So anyways, we're trying to find an open leg. This guy will identify very high, and then it starts to get lower and drop and then completely fade off. So it's starting to tell me that I did black, white, and red. I don't have a ground out here, because as of about 10 years ago, they started to change that in the code that you have to have 4 legs from a disconnect to the home. And we would have otherwise had Article 250.122 show us on the load side of a 200 amp breaker on, golly, I think that's about a, sorry, number 2. Anyways, I have to look at my chart. But basically, that's where you would have 4 wires to actually be able to trace better, but we don't have it. So we only had to use the neutral and the black. So if one of the legs melt, it has a tendency to also melt the insulation of the type of that RHW over there as well. And that can affect it pretty quick, because aluminum compact is nothing like a THW and -2 90 degrees Celsius rating. Probably more like a 60 degrees Celsius. But this is right here is where we think it's gonna be. He's gonna rent himself a little mini backhoe, get me a hole big enough for here. Then we can figure out which side, see where the melting started to happen, the heat stress, and then figure out that depth, and then try to create a loop underground, or we could do 2 manholes. At that point later, he probably could put 2 PVC, but the way I suggest to people, with this distance, you probably get away with a 3-aught copper, 2-aught maybe even, because they only had a 4-aught aluminum for 100 and I think it's a 205 foot distance. They didn't have 250 Casey mill, but they had 4-aught. So anyways, guys, once we got over to there, we cleaned up our connections. The one last thing I'll show you over here, just bear with me. And I got locked out. Okay. So right here, you want to keep in mind when you clean up your lugs from the old Deox from 40 years ago, use a battery terminal. I can't take credit. The homeowner actually suggested that. Very smart IT guy. Definitely gonna put one on the truck tonight for my garage because I have tons of them sitting around. Then we use this just simply to brush off, clean off. Again, make sure your power's dead, but if you're a homeowner, do not do this. Please call someone. Please don't call us to ask us how to do it. We will not answer your questions. Very easy to make a mistake and hurt yourself in this situation, especially if you don't understand what's going on with your fuses and your AIC fault current for the fuses as well. Anyways, we cleaned all this up and then we ohmed it out. We also did a continuity test with which are in the kilowatt of your rating, and I found that neutral to red was getting me 20 ohms, and black to white was giving me 0.2. So I could see that my red was the weaker link, and I identified it as well. Then it made sense. It dropped off a lot quicker than the neutral and the black over there. But remember, they're twisted as a triplex, so I was starting to think that the black and the red are affecting each other, and the neutral is not as bad. Last thing about this, guys, is we'll put it all back together. We'll do another voltage test now that's all clean and figure out what's going on. But it doesn't hurt to do a maintenance cleaning on these things. Again, this power is dead. It doesn't hurt to do a maintenance cleaning to get all this stuff cleaned off, and then go ahead and re-dip some fresh Deox. It'd be good for another 40 years, in my opinion, maybe 20. Depends on the location and where you're at, moisture. I heard in Tennessee, you got a lot more moisture, so you got to apply Deox a lot more often. Colorado is a super dry climate. But we kind of do our own little recipe here. Get some from our power guys and get some of our own and mix it up. Once we get that on, we'll pressure test that and get it all ready to go. Again, I don't have 4 legs here, which would have been wonderful to test it better with it. And again, I would definitely do, I guess the code talks about 300.5. You go 18 inches deep with a schedule 40 underground and at 80 above ground. But definitely oversize your size one size, because if you're pulling that, that's a long pull. I personally like using copper. Aluminum is way cheaper, usually 3 times less of cost by wire, 2.5%, somewhere in there. But with the labor, then putting the trench, and then you got to use your tape, put in your grounding wire tape 12 inches above that trench. If you do direct burial, you're supposed to put a decent 4 inches of squeegee to 6 inches, and then you have to bed that trench and put it at 2 foot deep. Other than that, that's kind of what's been going on. So go ahead and give them a cam around there. That's where that meter's at. Sometimes you don't get to see that. Way over right there. There's the pole coming all the way down and around, and then right, follow my hand, right there, that's where the fence post crossed the issue. So again guys, thanks for joining us. Oh, and then one other thing, just to show you continuity, I use a bug here, and I check by putting my bug in here because it gives you a better wrap around that port, just to see the continuity. Thanks guys for joining us. Have a great day.